All in Sports Network. We love sports.
It's a great day to be a Longhorn. We got breaking news. Already came out with an episode today, but Jake and I had to jump back onto the podcast with all of the headlines that the Texas Longhorns found themselves in today. Every single one of them, great news. And 2 5-star commits to the University of Texas today. One a flip from Georgia, one from the state of Florida, or from the state of Georgia. And it just seems as though Texas is dominating and bending over and spanking Kirby Smart and the Georgia Bulldogs, at least in the offseason. That doesn't mean they'll do it on the field. It means they're doing it in the offseason. Until they win on the field, that's when I'll officially call Texas daddy. But a great day today. Texas gets commitments from Tyler Atkinson. He went live on Pat McAfee, 5-star linebacker, number 1 linebacker in the country, number 1 player in the state of Georgia, and number 9 player in the country. And then following that, just a handful of hours later, a surprise, I think, to most, Jake. A lot of inside Texas, beat writers weren't really expecting this one. A lot of them said, hey, you know what? We heard rumors and murmurs for Tyler Atkinson. That wasn't a huge surprise, but the big surprise of the day was getting the flip from 5-star defensive tackle, number 1 defensive lineman, James J.J. Johnson, flipping from Georgia to Texas, making it the 4th 5-star recruit in the 2026 recruiting class for the University of Texas.
Yeah, and I mean, this one truly came out of left field because, I scout the inside Texas and all the different insider sources on Texas football, two of the best ones out there. I scout the boards constantly, and I'm looking at every article every day. There was nothing expected about this. There wasn't even a post an hour before of going, watch out for this. It was
about 15 minutes before the news broke. People were like, oh, this is happening.
Yeah, in fact, most of the YouTube channels that kind of just got done going live about the Atkinson had to go live again. We're like, we didn't know this was happening. Mm-hmm. And so kind of happened really unexpectedly to even the insiders, which just does not happen that much anymore. I think it might have been Eric Nolan or one of the guys who was talking about it and was like, very rarely do I get caught off guard anymore. And this was one that completely caught me off guard. Yeah. And it's a guy that they were obviously they were in on. I watched whenever he originally committed to Georgia, and the hope was that maybe Texas, had made up enough ground towards the end because they had made up a lot of ground in a short amount of time with Kenny Baker. But the Kenny Baker pipeline to Georgia continues, and this is 2 years in a row, by the way, where Texas got the number 1 recruit out of the state of Georgia. And yes, they have not beaten Georgia on the field yet. Granted, they've only had 1 year of opportunities to do so. And one of them was in overtime. But this is how Georgia got over the Alabama hump. Because let's not forget, Georgia for years could not beat Alabama. And that was for years. Imagine what Texas did this year against Georgia, but doing that for a longer period of time. That was Kirby Smart in Georgia against Nick Saban in Alabama. They started getting some of those top level, especially line of scrimmage recruits over Alabama. And then that's when the tides turned, pun intended.
The crimson tides turned.
And turned into a red dog wave against Bama. So hopefully that's what we're starting to see now at Texas. And now this is another example as well of Texas taking a position of weakness with depth and future projection. And now the defensive line group over these next years is about to become a gigantic strength. It's going to be
2 years ago. 2 years ago, where was Texas's edge group?
Not really that existent.
2 years today, where's Texas's edge group?
Well, and the best in the country, or at least arguably, without a doubt, arguably the best in the country.
And right now, the defensive tackles for Texas may be a weak point. We had it on our power rankings, at least near the bottom of the entire team in terms of a position rank. By the way, go check those videos out.
Yeah, and the only reason I had offensive line lower is because of the turnover from it being such a strong strength. Mm-hmm. That was a below a weakness. It was a complete liability when Sarkisian came into the program because they just didn't have enough linemen. Whenever he came in, enough scholarship linemen and enough big bodies. They were very undersized. They turned that into a strength, and now they targeted the D lines, the edge groups, and all this with going, we need to be better here. And Kenny, a lot of credit to Kenny Baker because he kind of came into we're seeing this year and with this portal cycle, with how many guys they had to go get, we're seeing the lingering effects of not good enough recruiting under Bo Davis while he was here. Good coach, great developer, not a great recruiter. And it hurt them going into this year. And that's why they had to hit the portal so hard. Kenny Baker is getting some dogs. And they are going to be loaded at D-line.
And taking them away from the dogs, I may
arguably
add.
Most importantly, taking them away from Georgia.
5-star James Johnson, and then you go down the list. 4-star Vodney Cleveland, 4-star Dylan Berryman, and 4-star Corey Wells, all on the defensive line in this upcoming recruiting class. Texas may be done at the defensive line position, at least on the interior line. Now, that doesn't mean that if someone's going to flip, they'll take the talent. It's one of those positions, Jake, where I don't think you can have too much talent on the football field, which is, always a commodity to have great depth. You never know what's going to happen throughout the regular season in terms of injuries, in terms of players stepping up, in terms of player development, this, that, and the other. But one thing that I really like that I've read about these recruits coming in this 2026 class on the defensive line is that not one player has the same skill set and fills the same role as the other one. They all play complementary roles in terms of run defense, in terms of pass rush, in terms of gap control, in terms of the penetration, in terms of situational downs. And so I think Johnson's probably going to be more of that penetrating role when it comes to an every down guy that you're going to line up near a Justice Terry whenever you get those two on the field in 2 to 3 years. And so really looking forward to the type of combinations that Texas is going to have depth-wise and the roles that these players are going to end up eventually filling within the next 2 to 3 years, because that's one thing that we've seen is, yes, bringing talent is important, but making it the right fit and getting these guys developed to where they can play a valuable role within the defense. And we know Coach PK likes to rotate the defensive line a lot and keep them fresh. This is only adding more ammunition to the fire that Texas has currently at the defense.
Yeah, I think they look at that blueprint of the Tavondre Sweat, Byron Murphy year of Tavondre Sweat was that just gap clogger. I mean, you weren't moving them. You were going to have to dedicate 2 linemen to him, and you weren't going to get up to linebacker level. Byron Murphy was the penetrator. And you feel like with how they're recruiting, kind of like you're talking about with the complementing roles, that's exactly, they're going for that kind of blueprint, at least for the first D-line, and having a rotation that can keep that up no matter who's in. And then you get your attacking, physical, fast, extremely athletic linebacker. From Anthony Hill to, Atkinson appears to be the guy in waiting already. If you go look at his film, and
might be a year one starter, might be a starter next year.
He will be one that's hard to keep off the field. Granted, it's tough because you got Ty Anthony. It's a good problem to have.
Yeah, but you've got comparisons to Roquan Smith and guys like that. I mean, that's.
But Ty Anthony Smith is an NFL level guy without a doubt, and got someone they're very high on. It is a great Bo Barnes. I mean, it's a great problem to have. Texas is just, they are truly going to have competition, especially on defense, at every position for starters for years to come right now. And offense, you feel like it's going to be a little more solidified over the next year or two, just because they're so young this year. They're going to have a lot of guys who, aren't going. I don't think we're going to see as many departures as we saw this past year going into next year. But the defense, I don't think Texas has ever recruited defense this well in its program history to this level. And really hasn't ever. Mac Brown's recruiting was great, but the trench recruiting and just the targeted recruiting that this staff does is incredible. And again, why people like All In Horns, like Inside Texas, like On Texas Football, were telling you not to panic in June whenever recruits weren't going Texas's way. And we go, this has happened every year, and every year it changes. And then this year, while at SEC Media's Days, shaking hands, saying hi to people, and smiling around, Texas is getting 10 stars worth of recruits and 2 guys.
Yep. And, speaking of that, Jake, we're going to get into SEC Media Day in this episode, so stay tuned to it. But before we get there, let's just give you a quick update on where Texas is in terms of recruiting across the country. Texas was around depending on whatever rankings you were looking at, the 12, 11, 10 range before today started. Texas is now sitting at number 6, according to On3 Rivals, and that is with the addition of the 2 other 5 stars. Now, if you look at it, James Johnson actually listed as a 4-star on that recruiting, but he's the number 1 defensive lineman in the country, and more than likely, by all accounts, will be a consensus 5-star by the time his senior season is all but completed this upcoming year. But yeah, Jake, it's ironic enough that Georgia and Texas both share SEC Media Day earlier today, and Sark is over there talking to Kirby Smart, shaking hands, and all he knows in the back of his head is, I'm taking one of your 5 stars away from you in about 10 minutes. That news is going to break. But hey, how are you doing? It's nice to see you. Oh yeah. Oh no, off season's going great. Looking forward to our matchup later on this season. And yeah, I mean, just all the small talk, but on the inside, he's just probably just about to explode with the amount of excitement that he's getting. Because speaking of SEC Media Day, we can kind of jump into it and just transition right to it, unless you have other things you want to say about these guys. But Sark mentioned that he can't really talk about specific recruiting, but how the recruiting is affected by not just like, look, we've backed off of guys that are in it just for NIL. We've backed away from guys that the conversations tend to lean a little bit too NIL heavy or too sponsorship heavy in terms of revenue sharing and cash. And he said, we've actually backed away from some of those guys. And instead, what we've done is we've mostly committed to guys that we want and we know are in it to win and be at the University of Texas to build their career and get that second paycheck, quote unquote, which would be the NFL, not necessarily in college.
Yeah, guys that they back off and that they don't continue to try to recruit. It's really telling to me what proves true and what Sarkisian said. And obviously money plays a part in it. If Texas didn't have money to spend, they wouldn't be getting these recruiting classes. That's just the nature of today's recruiting. But they also prove true in that word when you look at a guy like a Felix Ojo, who Texas has stopped trying to recruit. They have no interest in it because of the dollar amount it would take, and then B, we're going to a school that wasn't in your top 8 last second. I think that stands out what you're going for more than anything. And so you've seen examples other than that as well that have kind of proven that point true. From Sarkisian and this staff. And you see it in the guys that they bring in, their attitudes, how their work ethic is. I mean, they're bringing in 5 stars who get in there and are immediately the hardest workers. You think of an Anthony Hill, you think of a Kelvin Banks, you think of, even though he's had times on the field that haven't been great, Amani Muhammad, who they at all points signed to as far as when practice, he takes his diet, everything very seriously. You're finding players who, A, work hard on the field, but B, also work hard off the field with diet, with GPA. Sarkisian brought up GPA again. He's very proud of that GPA that started at like a 2.5 when he got there and is now a 3.1 or 3.2, which is really impressive. And it goes to just show you that there is truly a culture in Austin with this football program.
Yeah, as he should be. He should be very proud of that. And I don't suggest why he wouldn't be proud of that. But no, Jake, another thing that they mentioned in that recruiting in terms of getting the right guys and whatnot is the culture that was built, is that a lot of these guys that they get, which won today, Tyler Atkinson, state champions at the high school level. Michael Taft, 2-time state champion, 2-time state champion MVP for that matter. Trey Wisner won a state championship. Colin Simmons won a state championship. A lot of these guys, you go down the list, win at the high school level, and then they get to college, and then they lose in the semifinal game of the college football playoffs, and they're beat up, they're torn up, They're motivated. They're twice as motivated as they would have been if they won to get back to that point and redeem that loss. And so that was one thing that Sark mentioned as well that really stood out to me in terms of the competitiveness and just, again, it all comes down to the program culture that he has created with this coaching staff.
And that's how you find sustained success. And how they've done such a good job with retention whenever these guys are getting, people talk about what Texas is spending. They don't talk about the fact that a lot of these guys are taking, I guess what you would consider pay cuts to stay at Texas. A Colin Simmons, a Wingo. These guys are getting offered bigger deals to go elsewhere in the offseason, and they're choosing to stay at Texas. Granted, they're still making a lot, but they're still taking less, which is always easier to talk about than to actually do when you're getting numbers thrown at you, especially when you're 18, 19. If you're getting offered $500K more, that's a big difference. That's a lot of money, even if you are talking about millions of dollars. And so, I think the culture speaks in how they've been able to retain, because Texas doesn't get hit very hard by the portal. Typically, guys who leave are guys that are leaving because they're not going to be on the playing field come the next season or the next 2 seasons.
Yeah, Jake. Other headlines that came from SEC Media Day. Obviously, this is Sark believes that this is one of the team's deepest defensive rosters. When he was going through and naming guys on the roster, Jake, it was odd to me, not odd, pleasantly surprised that one of the second or third names, Murad Watson.
Yep.
That really stood out to me.
That tells you how much he has stood out already in his short time at Texas. It's not that surprising, honestly, just from the standpoint of him he was a freshman All-American. People act like just because he was at Syracuse, which is in a Power 4 conference, by the way, but just because he was at Syracuse, he kind of goes under the radar. The fact he was at Syracuse and was a freshman All-American is even more impressive. He wasn't someone that was expected to be that. And so now you get him at Texas where, Kenny Baker's already shown signs of being a very good developer in his first year. I'm very excited to see he could be the next, star type defensive tackle for them. In Alex January, we've talked about some concerns with the D-line group. I don't think we're very concerned about the depth of this group. We're maybe more concerned about the playmaking, but I do think there's a lot of potential in this group for playmakers, whether it be a January, whether it be a Murad Watson or a guy like Travis Shaw or Cole Brevard, where the light switch just clicks on and they become a little bit bigger of a monster than they've shown in other years.
Now, Jake, I can't get too far into SEC talk without covering covering the lead here. And I don't mean to cover the lead, but there was a little bit of a mishap and maybe there was some paying off. I don't know. I don't like to assume, but when Sark was announced, they happened to just play the Aggie War fight song as he was approaching the podium. Now, Sark handled it well. In fact, I don't even know if he necessarily knew it was happening as he was like walking up, because he just looked focused in, or he just let it roll off his shoulder and just like, yep, bulletin material. There's just another thing that we can add to our bulletin board material to get prepared for the Texas A&M Aggies whenever they come into Austin this year.
Yeah, much like Elko, talking about looking forward to Texas when they were playing Auburn and then laying an egg against Auburn. It was pretty funny for that to happen. They got the song right on his way out.
Yeah.
But someone got paid off. I like to assume things and be conspiratorial. Someone got paid off to do that. The fact that it was A&M of all schools.
The
only thing I think of is if you got like on your screen a list and A&M's right below Texas, and you just click the wrong one. Or you got slipped, $100K by some rich A&M donor, and you clicked that because they thought it would be funnier than it actually was.
Now, if it is, I mean, it was kind of funny. It wasn't hilarious, but it was a comical situation. Again, I'm really glad Sark. Sark is one of those guys that I feel like if he would have caught it, he would have commented on it. He's pretty open. He's pretty transparent about whatever's on his brain.
You would have made a little small joke about it.
A little joke, a little jab. So I'm not sure he quite like grasped it as it was happening. But yeah, no, he's nothing but class. Jake, other headlines, obviously Arch Manning was a topic of discussion through some of the questions. And Arch's running ability and things like that were said in different interviews, and kind of how the team is reacting and responding to Arch. And one thing that he said about Arch is really great about poking fun at himself and making light of a situation that if he messes up or whatever, he kind of laughs about it, jokes about it, isn't too hard on himself whenever he doesn't need to be too hard on himself. He obviously has that Manning perfectionism in his DNA, but that's another thing that just makes Arch Manning feel so down to earth and so real. And I think that's what makes him such a great leader, is that these guys don't look at him as Arch Manning. Oh my gosh, like this guy's a superstar and he's football royalty. They just look at him as just another one of the guys.
Yeah. And that, I mean, he is more, we kind of talked about this going into last season and during last season about what the transition from Quinn Ewers to Arch is going to be like. Whereas Quinn kind of had to develop himself into a leader, Arch is naturally that more boisterous leader. And it's going to be really fun to see how the team responds to a different leadership, maybe a different leadership, that kind of change in leadership that's needed for this team. A little bit more pointed, vocal, a little bit more swaggy, if you will, type leadership from your quarterback. I think it'll bring a little bit, not necessarily a breath of fresh air, because I don't want to make it sound like something was wrong with Quinn, but a change of vibe that maybe thrusts this team to that next level that we haven't seen them quite reach yet, but they've been very close to.
Can I put it this way? A change of scenery without changing the scenery.
Yeah.
It's kind of like just something new, something fresh, but you get to stay home. You get to stay where you're at. You get to stay with your boys. You don't get to change a whole lot, but you do kind of get a feel of a change of scenery, even though you're comfortable exactly where you're at. I don't know. It is hard to explain, but again, because these guys, they rallied behind Quinn, especially at the end of the year, and it really showed in Quinn's play. I think Quinn played much better towards the end of the season than he was, towards the beginning, the middle of the season last year. Jake, talk a little bit about what Sark said about Trevor Gooseby.
Oh, I mean, I will happily do that first off, because Gooseby's my next guy that I'll be drilling over come the next draft cycle, because he's likely gone after this year. But just talking about, we talk about the on-field development, and this is somewhat on-field, but the weight room development of these kids, Gooseby going from just about 270 pounds when he came on campus, which probably part of the reason he was a 3-star. But Texas saw the frame he had, knew he could probably grow in to an SEC caliber, NFL caliber lineman. So 270 when he got on campus, he's just about 320 now. So just about 50 pounds, and that's a good weight. Because if you've seen Gooseby, he doesn't look like me. He doesn't look like just a big boy. He looks like a powerful, in shape lineman. When you look at a lot of these linemen in the NFL nowadays, you'll be like, they're 320. They look like they have an 8-pack and are just these statues out there, these metal statues. But then he also just talked about, how Gooseby's become a leader in that offensive line group. And it's why, and I hate to say this, but Kelvin Banks being healthy was great, and him being able to play, especially in the Ohio State game, was important. But him missing a little bit of time might have been a really good thing for this year's team, just because you feel like Gooseby got that extra burst of confidence. The staff and the team and the players around him, the offensive line group, have a new level of confidence around Gooseby. And it allows him to be more of a leader, just because of the fact that he showed that he does have it. Because when Kelvin Banks comes off the field and you don't notice a difference, and he comes off the field unexpectedly in the revival of a rivalry that had been gone for over a decade on your toughest road game of the year, and you still don't notice a difference when someone comes in for basically their first real playing time in their career, that catches the eye of not only fans, but the players, the coaches, and just the offensive line group itself.
Oh yeah, no, I completely agree. Jake, anything else that we want to hit on, other than kind of what we've already talked about with SEC Media Day? Anything else that jumped out to you that I'm not necessarily hitting on yet?
As always, we are Pate State enjoyers here, and we got to mention the Josh Pate tweet, or post on X, the Everything app. It all happens on X, which was Sark is walking around Atlanta, shaking hands like a mob boss, knowing full well what his soldiers are doing out in the recruiting streets.
Love it.
Tweet of the day. Tweet of the day from that.
You know, Josh Pate just has the perfect way to say something and get his point across in a humorous way, I may add, but also a very accurate way. Because that's exactly how I was picturing at SEC Media Day talking to Kirby Smart. And then he knows what the soldiers are doing out on the streets. He knows.
Yeah, and if you haven't seen the post, go to it. Just scroll through the replies. There's a lot of enjoyable replies in there.
Yeah.
All, Scarface and Sopranos and just mob related type post about what Sarkeesian and Texas kind of pulled off today. That feels like a little bit of a recruiting heist earlier than we're used to Texas pulling off these heists.
I completely agree. All right, Jake, that's going to do it for today's episode. As always, like, share, and subscribe. This was breaking news, kind of an extra cherry on top episode for you for the week because, like we said, we record some of these episodes, especially during the summertime, way in advance so we can get our daily fix of all things Texas Longhorns. But with all the news that happened today, we had to jump on and talk about it. We couldn't wait to talk about it for another week or so. So it just was too much going on for us not to talk about it. So a little double header for you here today of All In Horns.
Yeah, college football never sleeps. We thought we were going to be able to cruise for a little bit and just kind of take our foot off the pedal. Sark reminded us what all gas, no brakes mean, because there is no taking a break in the middle of July. You got to be ready to kind of adapt and overcome adversity. Granted, this is a good type of adversity, but here we are delivering the news.
And that is going to do it. That is your daily fix for all things Texas Longhorns right here on All In Horns. I'm Tanner Carlson. That is Jake Jimerson. And as always, ladies and gentlemen, hook 'em.
All In Sports Network. We love sports.